Thank you everyone for coming. My name is Stephen Abreu. I'm president of the Politics, Economics, and Law Club at SUNY Old Westbury. Some of you might remember me as the guy working the Bernie table last year, except I didn't have a beard. You might have seen the video of me getting harassed by the campus police for registering voters. Good times. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Old Westbury PEL Club, and Instagram at OWPEL Club, right up there. And if you just walk in, we're going to start with Jeffrey Peress, Green Party candidate from SUNY Old Westbury for Assembly District 13. Hey guys, I'm here with Jeffrey Peress, a fellow student at Old Westbury who's running for the Assembly District 13 against incumbent Chuck Levine and Republican Jeffrey Vito. So here's Jeffrey Peress.
Hello, my name is Jeff Peress. I'm running for the 13th Assembly District. I'm a lifelong resident of the 13th Assembly District and the city of Glen Cove, which covers Glen Cove, Seacliff, parts of Woodbury, and parts of Bayville. I'm currently a part-time student at SUNY Old Westbury. I'm majoring in sociology, and I received my degree at Nassau Community College in restaurant management. I'm also involved in various civic organizations. I was a past volunteer for the North Shore Sheltering Program in Glen Cove for homeless men, and I'm currently a volunteer firefighter for the Glen Cove Fire Department. I am currently also a delegate for the Nassau County Firefighters Association, and I served as a board member to my synagogue for 7 years. And I got involved in politics when I was 12 years old. I'm running because I'm not happy with what's happening in Albany. I'm not happy with the corruption and political climate there. I'd like to do a few things. One, I'd like to change the political structure, such as ethics reforms. I'd like to eliminate fusion, no more cross endorsements, and opportunity ballots where judges, judicial candidates can steal other political parties' lines, and everything else like that. And I also want reform. I want criminal justice reform, legalization of marijuana, complete repeal of the Rockefeller drug laws, full pardons, apologies, a Truth and Reconciliation Commission like they had in post-apartheid South Africa, and reparations for all those that were victims of the drug war and were convicted of drug felonies in New York State. Another issue I have is, in New York State, if you're convicted of a felony, you're allowed to vote, but if you're still on parole serving your time, you cannot vote. I want to repeal that law. It's unjust, and convicted felons that are serving time on parole are also pay taxes. Third thing I want to do is I want to reduce your property taxes. And how am I going to reduce property taxes? And how am I going to make all the SUNY and CUNY schools free? Well, the first thing is you utilize the existing stock transfer tax. That's $17 billion a year. And that gets rebated to Wall Street every single year. That's our money, not their money. Second is reinstate a progressive taxation. The top 5% of New Yorkers will pay an additional $8 to $12 billion a year in revenue. These New Yorkers, these 5% are not going to leave New York because they love their home, they love their business. Third, reinstate revenue share. And the way revenue share works, it's like working in a restaurant. When the total tips collected, a portion goes back to the wait staff. And that's how it is here. The total taxes, if you live, whatever county you live in, whatever town, like the town of Oyster Bay and the city of Glen Cove, the total taxes, state taxes that were collected up in Albany, 2% come back down. Another thing that what I want to do to reduce taxes is we're the only state in New York where New York puts the burden of Medicaid payments in all the 62 counties, where they have to pay 25% of the portion. Other states, the federal government pays 50%, state subsidizing. We need to take over those payments to relieve the undue tax burden on the county. We need to reinstate, and we need to save money by initiating a single-payer health care plan, which Richard Godfrey introduced every single year. And another thing is utilities, the economy, Green New Deal. That's job like the New Deal under Roosevelt, the same thing, but with green jobs. We'll create solar, wind, hemp, and tidal power and geothermal power. It's undue burden. Right now we're the second highest utility payers in this country, and it's an undue burden on businesses. So this will reinstate the jobs. This will bring jobs, and it will create actually more jobs. And I also would like to bring up the issue of campaign finance reform. We need public funding, no matching funds, public funding. This eliminates private contributors, this eliminates the LLC loopholes, and if you run for office, you get a certain amount of money allocated for a certain budget for your office or staff and advertisements, etc. So I'm urging everyone to vote Green Party except for the judicial candidates. The Green Party does not cross endorse anyone. Do not vote for any of the judicial candidates that are on the Green Party line in Nassau County. I urge you to vote for Jill Stein and John Barack for president. And I urge you to vote for Robin Laverne Wilson for U.S. Senate. I urge you to vote, if you live in Rockville Center, in that area, the 9th Senate District, for Lawrence Seth Hirsch. And in the 20th Assembly District out in Long Beach, I urge you to vote for Joseph Mahan. This is real reform. Thank you for your support. If you have any questions, go onto my website, www.electperess.info. It takes $5 billion for education, and this is how we pay for public education. Thank you.
And now for the Q&A portion of Jeffrey Peress's forum. So Jeff, your average working class citizen running for office, what are the struggles you face as both a worker, student, and not only that, but someone who's running outside the corporate sphere of influence?
Well, one thing is I do not accept money. The Green Party does not accept money from outside sources and private, we do not accept money from corporations. Second thing is, I struggle because by work I have to find some time to balance to study for my exams. Third, struggle of healthcare also, because my health insurance, along with every New Yorker's health insurance, goes up every year because of these greedy private for-profit insurance companies. I support a single-payer healthcare bill, which Richard Godfrey introduced every year in the Assembly and finally passed the last 2 years, but it failed in the state Senate. And we need something, because if you're not happy with the job you're in, I'd like to relocate somewhere else. But if you're not happy, and a lot of people are unhappy with their place of employment, they can leave and find something else like closer to home. Or if they're unemployed, they're still covered.
Yeah.
And healthcare is a human right.
Definitely. I agree with you on that.
Yes.
So, another question I had, especially given the recent light of events that we've had in the past several years with the widespread exposure of police brutality, especially in minority communities, especially here in New York City and even on Long Island. Where do you stand on that?
Where do I stand? Unlike my opponents, I stand firm. Jill Stein stands firm also. We want an independent review board that has, unlike New York City, they have a civilian review complaint board, but it's worthless if you can't subpoena, if you can't prosecute, if you can't have disciplinary actions against police officers that get away with it. So an independent review, an independent judicial, an independent prosecutor that's not elected can subpoena these problems in this board, and we can hold the police accountable. I'm not anti-police, we're not anti-police. There are good police officers, just like there are bad police officers, but we need to hold them accountable.
Yeah. Thanks. Thanks for your time, man. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming out and making this time in your busy day. I really appreciate it, and best of luck to you.
Great.
And I don't forget, 2 years ago I voted for you because you were running against Chuck Levine at the time, and Chuck Levine was supporting the red light camera program, the speed light camera program, where they were tracking people's speed through certain areas and giving them tickets. And I remember I was completely against it. I was completely against Chuck Levine. And I looked up who else was running, and I saw your name. I had no idea who you were. I saw you running the green. I was what you stood for, and that you were against that kind of stuff. And I went with you that year. So I'm glad to see you running again now.
Thank you very much.
Definitely. So for those who missed it, that was Jeffrey Peress from New York State Assembly District 13, a Green Party candidate from SUNY Old Westbury. And now we have Jim Gaughran running for State Senate District 5 in this area against incumbent Carl Marcelino.
Okay, well, thank you all for coming, for listening, and I apologize for my raspy voice, but I've been going since 4:30 at the train station, pretty much nonstop, and I'm starting to lose my voice talking to so many people, so I apologize for that. My name is Jim Gaughran, and I'm running for the State Senate in the 5th District, which includes this campus. In fact, this campus is actually, I think, the western and southern border edge of the district. Includes much of the town of Oyster Bay, everything north of the expressway, and then south. It goes into parts of Hicksville and Old Bethpage, Plainview, Syosset, and also the entire city of Glen Cove, and the town of Huntington, where I live. It's a 50-50 Nassau-Suffolk district. And I'm running against Carl Marcelino, who's been a state senator for 20 years. I'm an attorney by profession. And over 20 years ago, I was elected as a Huntington Town Council person. In fact, I was elected right out of law school at 26 years old. I was actually the youngest person ever elected. And when I was on the Huntington Town Board, I was very active in environmental issues. Believe it or not, the town was not recycling back then. They were just throwing everything into the trash. So I wrote a recycling law. I wrote an ethics law. One of the first in the state that became a model for the rest of the state, requiring you to fully disclose income, have a real process to go after conflicts of interest, and really to make sure that people in public office are not using it for their personal benefit. After that, I was elected to the Suffolk County Legislature, where among my accomplishments were, I wrote the Clean Drinking Water Protection Act, which purchased the Central Pine Barrens and many critical watershed areas throughout Suffolk County, and the result of which is we now have an ample supply of water from the aquifer forever, as long as we protect it. I also was involved in cleaning up the Suffolk County Police Department. There was corruption, there were a bunch of issues. I was put in charge of the committee overseeing the police department. We brought in a reform police commissioner. And among other things that we did was we implemented community policing so that we have police officers more in tune with the community, more representative of the community, and spending time in the community trying to understand everybody's concerns and problems. So why, all these years later, have I decided to run for office again? Well, I'll tell you what happened. I was appalled when I was watching the trials of Dean Skelos, the Senate Republican leader, who happens to be, who is a Republican, the majority leader of the state Senate at the time, and Sheldon Silver, a Democrat, who was the Speaker of the New York State Assembly. And if you followed those trials, you could even listen to the wiretaps played during those trials. I can go online and listen to them today. And I was absolutely appalled at how clear it became that the leaders of our legislature were really so much concerned with using their public office for their personal benefit. The result was the public's interest was not at the top of the list. And what does this corruption mean? Of course, they were both convicted, now awaiting sentencing. What does this corruption mean? Well, it means dysfunction in Albany, particularly for Long Island. I believe we get hurt the most, because for every $3 we as Long Island taxpayers send to Albany, that's income taxes you pay, sales tax you pay every time you go and buy something, for the $3 we send up there, we only get $2 back. Doesn't make any sense. There's no reason why we need to be bankers for the rest of the state. And hurt the most are our local property taxes, and even more our kids in public schools, because if you're not getting your fair share of funding from Albany for the public schools, class sizes go up. They close libraries. They take away sports programs. And it also impacts the property taxpayers, because if there's less state aid, property taxes go up. And when property taxes go up, the people who get hurt the most are basically two categories. younger people who have saved enough money to maybe buy their first home, but then they realize when they do the calculations, they can pay the mortgage, but they can't pay the taxes. And it hurts people who are senior citizens who have paid off their mortgage, paid to help their kids go through college. And now they think they can continue to live there, but the taxes keep going up, so they have to move. So this is all a part of the major dysfunction in Albany. What am I going to do about it? Well, I'm going to support real ethics reform. I'm going to sponsor and vote for legislation that is going to either ban, if we can get that through, or if not, extremely limit any outside income for a senator or a member of the assembly, because you've got to take that away, and that's the best way that you can clean this mess up. Also, as we heard on the screen, the limited liability corporation loophole, the LLC loophole. What that means is that you, as an individual, could go create almost an unlimited number of legal entities solely for the purpose of contributing the maximum amount of money to any political candidate. In effect, you can buy a public official, and believe me, folks, there are lots of people up there that have been bought. We need to eliminate that. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce a law that will make it illegal for you to use campaign funds if you're an elected official or a candidate for personal purposes. You may think, well, why isn't that the law now? Yeah, there's a sentence in the law, the election law, that says it's the law. But then the Board of Elections, when they interpret it, say, well, you know, we're pretty liberal about what you can do. So if you want to go to some people have gone to Ireland, they brought their family, they spent $10,000, and they justify the trip based on the argument that, well, when I talk to my voters of Irish descent, I can better communicate with them. They go to the fanciest steakhouses in the world, never open up their own wallet, so-called campaign meeting. They rent and buy cars that they use for personal benefit. And why is this part of the corruption? Well, since 95% of the members of the state legislature routinely get reelected, and much of their money comes from lobbyists and other special interests, the folks giving the money, in effect, know that a lot of it they're putting directly in the pockets of the people, that are supposed, of the representatives that are supposed to be serving the people. Once we get rid of the dysfunction, we can start then dealing with the critical issues that we're facing as an island and as a state. Protecting our drinking water is of utmost concern. In addition to being an attorney, I chair the Suffolk County Water Authority, where I'm actually overseeing the largest sole source aquifer system in the United States of America. We have problems with making sure that we're protecting our drinking water. All water is safe now, and we work very hard to make it that way, but with the level of nitrates that are getting into both our drinking water and into our surface water, we're very concerned for the future. What is the solution? Well, we need to start replacing your traditional cesspools across Long Island. In some cases with sewage treatment systems where that makes sense, but sometimes environmentally that doesn't make sense, so we have to replace the cesspool, which could be leaking nitrates to the ground and eventually get it to drinking water or to surface water, with a state-of-the-art cesspool treatment system that now exists that actually filters things right on an individual's property. The Long Island Sound is in danger of being lost. We're seeing every year more and more areas that for baymen, for people, for fishermen, are being lost. We're losing it recreationally. We can save it, not only in dealing with the nitrate problem that I just explained, but stormwater runoff that's constantly filling into the Long Island Sound for everybody's lawns, the roads, everything that's on the roads. We need filtration systems. That is part of why we need to get our fair share from Albany, because this is a regional problem. Areas like Chesapeake Bay have been cleaning up by filtering the stuff out of the bay. We can do the same thing with the Long Island Sound. We need more funding for infrastructure. We need more funding for housing. We need more funding for many of the programs in the state that continue to be cut back. I spoke to a correction officer at Sing Sing a couple of weeks ago, and I asked him, what percent of the inmates in this state, this upstate state prison, what percent of the inmates are here because of mental health issues? And he said, Jim, probably at least 50%. And that's part of the problem we have now, because over the decades, we've sort of failed people who have mental illness. The cutbacks have been tremendous, and this is a fiscal issue as well, because if 50% of the folks in the prison are there because of mental illness, and believe me, some of them with mental illness need to be there because we need to be protected, but a lot of people who are there are people who, if they receive the treatment, receive the help, receive the counseling in the beginning, maybe they wouldn't have had the problem of putting them into jail, and they'd be a productive member of society paying taxes, and we wouldn't be paying to incarcerate them. So there are a lot of problems with the state. Much of it deals with corruption, a lot of it deals with dysfunction, and I've probably gone on long enough, but I would very much ask you, when you vote on Tuesday, I'm on the Democratic line, I'm almost at second to last. Dean Hart, who you're going to hear from before, is last on the ballot in most cases. And when you vote, please consider me, and I'd be happy to questions. Is that?
Yeah, now we got 5 minutes for questions.
Okay. Who has a question? Yes, sir.
So you have a lot of experience in environmental issues with the state DEC.
Yes.
Have you worked with them in the past?
Yeah, also as an attorney, private attorney, I have represented clients in some environmental litigation and trying to go after people who are polluting. I actually was one of the few lawyers in the United States of America that representing a community that was opposed to a Walmart being built right next to a residential community. I was actually able to stop Walmart. So I am very familiar with environmental laws and with some of the environmental issues, but I'm not an environmentalist, I'm an attorney. I think part of your representation is you want a state legislature that's people from all walks of life, but I have been very involved in a lot of issues. Overdevelopment is also a concern, particularly as it relates to the Long Island Sound, because while we're trying to protect the Sound, if we continue to develop and not mitigate the environmental concerns, then the progress we hope to make in cleaning it up, we're going to be going backwards. On the flip side, there is a need for development, but you can have smart development where you're redeveloping areas, particularly along, there's a big movement along the railroad tracks throughout Long Island to have transit-oriented development that could be particularly attractive to young people who really can't afford to live here. So there is the balance, but I think you just have to talk to everybody and you have to involve people in the process, and I think we can both protect the environment and move forward economically at the same time. In fact, I think when I was talking about these state-of-the-art systems to replace cesspools, if you factor in that so many people, perhaps hundreds of thousands of homes in Long Island are going to eventually need these, we could create that sort of a green jobs right here on Long Island. We could create an industry on Long Island that could help solve our environmental problems and at the same time boost us economically. So those are some of the things I think we can do.
Adding on to the environment, have you dealt with any corrupt government environmental agencies or officials, or seen any corruption?
Well, I don't know if I've seen any corruption personally. I've certainly read a lot about it. And, there are obviously issues with the DEC. You always, you have bribery in just about any agency and any level of government. Have I personally seen anybody? A couple of people at the Water Authority, a couple of times we had some allegations. We investigated and I turned people in for violating the law. But I've certainly read a lot more about it.
Sorry. Will you work with the DEC to make some more legislation just to better protect the island in itself, help resolve this deer problem out east?
The deer problem?
I mean, with the overpopulation and
population of deer. Right. Well, first of all, the New York State Legislature sets the environmental policies. Okay, so we don't have to rely on the DEC. We can change the law to meet the environmental concerns. At the same time, you can't legislate everything. You do have to delegate authority to agencies, and then they have to promulgate regulations as well. The deer population is an issue in many communities, including where I live out in Northport. And it's a balance, because there have been the acceptance once in a while in state parks and other properties to allow bow hunting. There's a lot of opposition to that from animal rights activists, but there's also people who are begging to do something to reduce the deer population. So that's an issue that the DEC under current law has the authority to regulate, based on trying to balance the needs, between the impact on a community, the impact on a park, and the ability to use a park, and just nature, to try to allow nature to move forward.
I understand.
Yes.
When you write a bill that, when you write a bill that tries to assess, campaign finance reform, in which way does the opposition try to crimp the legislation? In which ways can they try to inhibit?
Well, the way they have been doing it for years is, and this is in the New York State Senate, which is Republican, and they have and by the way, the corruption in Albany is bipartisan. There's some good Republicans that I'll be very happy to work with. When I was a county legislator, we had 9 Democrats and 9 Republicans, so the only way to get anything done is you had to work together, and and I did, and I got a lot of things done. But in terms of passing legislation, the Republicans in the Senate are just refusing to allow it for a vote. There are bills in the New York State Senate that have a vast majority of members of the Senate sponsoring the bill, but the leadership of the Senate will not allow it to go on the floor. So they're already written. The LLC loophole, there's a couple of bills that ban personal use. I can write my own because I think we can make it stronger. But there already are campaign finance proposals. I do think we need some form of public funding. The way I would campaign funding, the way I would like to do it is similar to what we have when you check off on your income tax when you write your federal income taxes. You could send money to the federal presidential election committee that can be used to fund candidates. They're not doing it anymore because there's not a lot of money there, and from a practical standpoint, going back to Howard Dean, they decided they just wanted to raise money and not follow the guidelines, which limits what you can spend, limits what you can raise and where you can raise it. But in New York State, when you fill out your income tax, the very last page, they have a laundry list of causes, environmental causes, wildlife, where you can just put in the dollar amount that you want to donate. I'd like to start with a dollar amount that you donate to a campaign public financing system, start generating some money, and then let's see if we can develop some sort of a system to try to take the dark money out of politics. Also need laws that are going to require much more disclosure of where your donations come from and how you're spending the money. But I think what you're also alluding to is that once you pass the law, what often happens is that once it's implemented, you go through an election or two, the special interests figure out how they get around the law and what the loophole was that you didn't even think of. So, legislation is fluid. You're always going to have to tweak it and change it as you move forward.
Thank you.
Okay? Thank you all very much, and please, Jim Gaughran's my name. If you can vote for me, if you live in the 5th District, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Now we're going to move on to John DeVito, who's running for a state senate district in the 3rd District, out east. That's Shirley, Mastic area.
My next was
Gaughran.
went to high school with him.
He's 26 years old, he's a progressive, and you guys are like...
Len Duval. Hello.
Hi.
Sorry I couldn't join you today. Westbury is a bit of a drive for us here in Belfort. But happy to be here. Glad to. My name is John DeVito. I'm running for the State Senate's 3rd District. I usually like to break the ice by acknowledging that I'm a young guy, but since I'm with Old Westbury, I think a few of you have me beat, and as the election has drawn closer, that joke has started to fall flat. But in any event, at a place like Long Island where people like us are struggling to find opportunities, where young middle-class families are leaving because they can't afford it, I think we would benefit from young people having a seat at the table on Long Island in Albany, where decisions are made that affect our future. I was born and raised in Mastic Beach, a complicated place at times. There are a lot of people working hard to better their community, but you don't have to look far to see what disastrous Republican policies have done over the course of a decade. I tried to do the right thing. Went to college as a first-generation college student while working full-time. Served in the public interest as a community organizer all over the country. Went to law school in a new career in public service, but the problem was when I got back to Long Island, I looked around and I said, people can't afford to live here, and Albany is so corrupt on both sides that I just don't think anything will change without some new blood. So I got in the arena, and I'm not a politician. I'm a millennial candidate with some new ideas. I think we should have a voice up in Albany, and I've stayed tried and true to my progressive values. So I very much look forward to taking your questions, having a dialogue about the issues we face and what's at stake in the upcoming election.
Anyone have a question?
Questions, anyone?
Oh, that's the question?
Yeah.
What?
If you just really, I can really hear you. Like, and if you can't, let me see.
So if Ariel maybe could read the question a bit closer, or someone.
What can you do as state senator about rising student tuition for SUNY and CUNY colleges?
Yeah, so it's a multi-pronged answer based in part on what we can do on the state level and how we can fight it on the federal level. And I think we need to look closely at the reality on the federal level. Right now, our government is making money off us, charging interest rates at an upwards of 6%. It's not consistent with market values. There's no such thing as loan forgiveness with respect to declaring bankruptcy. That can't be said for even people in the private sector. So we need to be putting pressure on our federal partners to reform student loans, bring down interest rates to be more consistent with at least the market, but preferably lower, since we're investing in education. On the state level, it's been pretty clear that CUNY and SUNY have been underfunded and have been used as a political football. And by the way, it's not just by the Republicans. It's also by the Democrats. The governor, for example, threatened to hold up CUNY funding just this year. So we need to be making sure that CUNY and SUNY schools are funded at levels that will reduce the burden on students struggling to invest in themselves and their community. And I have to tell you, quite honestly, a Republican majority in the New York State Senate won't even go near that.
Back here.
How much I'm not sure if you can even hear me from here.
What's the question?
I definitely can't hear you.
Okay, because there's such a Republican majority in the other counties, how will you choose to address that issue so that you can pass something that's progressive in the first place?
What steps are you going to take to combat the Republican majority that you're faced with in the Senate?
Say that. How can we combat the Republican majority that we'd be faced with? Is that the question?
You got it.
Okay. So that by and large will be on you guys for the next 5 days. All right. We need to take 7 seats back to reclaim a Democratic majority in the state Senate, and many of them will come right here on Long Island, whether it's our seat, whether it's Jim's seat, who I think you heard from not so long ago, Haber's seat, or making sure we keep Todd Kaminsky's seat. So for these next 5 days, I would ask to stop what you're doing, take some time, invest in these races all along the island with your energy. Because unless we retake that majority, our progressive vision is going to be stifled, whether it's taking action on ethics reform to lower contribution limits from $10,000 at least down to max federal levels, whether it's banning outside income or closing the LLC loophole that allows wealthy individuals to funnel money into our electoral process, whether it's passing gender to protect our transgender brothers and sisters here in New York. A Republican majority in the state Senate won't allow these reforms to even come to a vote or to be debated. So, I will be the greatest champion of progressive values no matter who's in the majority, but I can tell you, unless we pick up those 7 seats, it's going to be very challenging to get some of these ideas into a reality.
We have time for another question or two? Going once, going twice.
So what would you say your stance on the New York Dream Act is?
Where do you stand on the New York Dream Act?
So I've been pretty public about my support for undocumented students. And I also need to face a lot of realities in our district. I'm endorsed by Make the Road Action, for example, for supporting the DREAM Act. It's not immediately clear that it will be able to be delivered as a reality. So I think one first step we can take is to implement the DREAM Fund, which at least opens up the account in New York State for private individuals, corporations, businesses, people, human beings, to put money into a fund that will be used for undocumented students who are attending SUNY and CUNY schools. I also would like to see the DREAM Act passed, but I'm hearing or I'm seeing that it will be, quite difficult unless we have an outright majority. So if we're dealing with a caucus with the independent Democrats, I'll be supporting the DREAM Fund. If we're dealing with a caucus of an outright Democratic majority, I'll be pushing for the DREAM Act.
And one last question to end on. As a millennial, what inspired you to run, and what advice do you have for other millennials running for office that want to run for office?
I'm really encouraged by the fact that so many millennials have stepped up to the plate all across the island, whether it's in the Assembly with Nikki Ambini, whether it's my neighbor in the State Senate, Peter Magistrali, and others, because one lesson I learned early on was when someone tells you that you can't do something, all it just means is that they can't do it. And we are on track to getting progressives in office, from millennial progressives in office, from state houses, to Congress. So, we faced a lot of obstacles along the way, some high eyebrows. Could we really pull this off? We raised them over $100,000 exclusively from individuals, free from special interests. We created a volunteer base that allowed us to win the primary, for example, without spending a dime. We can very well take this election. We've been able to tie the poll. So what inspired me to get into the race is that we do need a seat at the table in Albany where decisions are being made that affect our future. And also, I didn't mind skepticism, being told that perhaps we couldn't do it, because I knew if we tapped into the energy that we have here on Long Island, we could all win. And I hope to do so in 5 days.
Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Take care.
So once again, that was John DeVito running for State Senate District 3.
Yeah.
And out Eastern Long Island. And now we have, last but not least, Dean Hart running for Assembly District 15, I believe. 15 is right?
Yes.
Awesome.
So, I guess you've heard from some politicians. Now it's time to hear from an anti-politician. That's what I was called. Because I never ran political offices or held political offices through a lifetime. I, like you, have a lot of education behind me and had maybe even some in front of me. Hopefully you guys have much more in front of you. Now, for 12 years post-high school education left me with lots of degrees, and then I went to businesses. I published scientific articles in peer-reviewed journals. I've been a clinician, a doctor. I've been many things in life, but one thing nobody would call me is a politician. And I just was amazed when somebody called me a politician. Don't do that. Because unfortunately, such a high percent of our politicians are stealing our money. I estimate 50 cents on the dollar goes to things that we tax-paying citizens, which you will be paying much more than you are now. You tax-paying citizens, and me too, will, we want our money spent on what we want it spent on, not on people with nepotism, cronyism, giving back to the friends that gave you donations to win your race. We don't like this. This is not what a tax dollar was about. This country was founded by some people, Jefferson, Washington, Franklin, Hamilton. They had money. They didn't need a political career to earn a living. They saw this great philosophical adventure ahead, and that document, the documents they created, the Bill of Rights, Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, I love reading it because it really is a beautiful document by people that want to make this nation great. And that's our roots, and in large part, we keep to that Constitution, but in large part we don't. And we have to now make sure, see, they didn't have any idea, a career politician, that's not a job, that's what you do at the end of your career maybe, or at the beginning of your career, in one last person's case. But mainly at the end of your career, you take care of your finances, you may have sold your business or passed it on to your children, and now you have the time and life experience to come to office and make the place a better place, because you've seen the guts and the real life experiences of a tax-paying citizen through businesses, big and small, seeing patients. The medical system is, for students, I'm not so sure how it works, but believe me, it's a tax on the middle class right now. The Affordable Care Act, it was and is necessary, but it needs reforms, modifications. It's no good the way it is. It was great to start with, but then nobody ever fixed any of it and made it a little better. I heard in Arizona, rates went 114% up. The thing has the potential to being a very great act. But right now, because nobody gets along in Washington, it's not getting there. On a state level, we can help and try to make it a little better. And I don't know if you realize that a third of the population of New York State actually is in the Medicaid group, so they don't pay co-payments, they don't pay deductibles, and then the rich people, they don't worry so much. But the middle class, the basic people that Democrats really represented from the get-go, there was no parties under Washington, but I think shortly around Jefferson's day, they started to have parties. The parties became polarized, and then they had to gain influence and had to find sources of income, because it's always about money in this country when you boil down an issue. And that you have power, you can wield influence because you can give out tax-paying dollars and do such. And it's happening all over the place. And Elliot Spitzer, I'll name him, I'll name Sheldon Silver, two Democrats. There's no end to the Democrat line. There's no end to the Republican line of crooks. Now, there are some politicians, hopefully you can think that I will be one, that will not do this for money. I'm donating my salary back to charity, and I'm not accepting any campaign contributions, because the campaign finance system as it is now is broken, it's corrupt. It is one of the main reasons there's all this crookedness. We've got to maintain, we don't want to raise taxes on the one hand. On the other hand, we have to have campaign finance reform. And when you're in office, you really shouldn't give a friend or a crony or a nepotism kind of effect to the contractors. So the ones that hold office should be blindfolded to the ones that get the money, and have an even playing field to get contractors with the best skill set, that's willing to work for the least expensive prices, but yet give us the best products. That's what we tax-paying citizens want. And that, I'm in the minority in this area, so I probably won't win. But on the other hand, and as an incumbent, so statistics are against me, but you know, you gotta try once and do the best you can with what you got, and I'm doing it. And I can rest very comfortably, win or lose, that I did the best I could do. And for a quarter century, I taught at Columbia University Medical School. Now I'm retired from there. I'm big on teaching, education. That's very much part of my ideals and values and mores. Education is supremely important, and that's one of the reasons our nation is so great, because of a few things. One being the public school system. When we went out west, pioneers, they always had a school. It may not have been a state-of-the-art like we have now in Long Island, but they always had schools, and we have to maintain a high education level so we can continue to be the greatest nation this earth has on it now, in my opinion. Anybody got questions? Yes.
What areas is your district under again?
I'm in Hicksville. This is in my district: Brookville, Oyster Bay, Bayville, Syosset, and Westbury. Do you live in any of those?
No, I actually live in the district of John DeVito.
Oh,
The person who's just on.
anybody live in my district?
District 15?
Yeah,
Does that also include Bethpage?
some of it.
I'm in it.
Okay. They saved the best for last, because it's the last column of the assembly. So, yeah, well, I guess I'm not going to be the first ever. I hate to be the president. Good God. But at the end of the thing, being last, that's a good spot too. When we do scientific papers, whoever's laboratory it is, who's the senior professor, they're the ones last on paper. And then usually the one that does the most work can get to be first. Anyway, any other questions?
Now on the water problem with Bethpage, what will you be doing to more or less help us out in that sense when you get into office?
Well, let me tell you, I have a master's in biology from Hofstra University. So one of my degrees, I have too many, forget them all. But this one is pertinent here. I'm a biologist, and I'm quite aware of the northern Grumman, the Grumman plume now. It's Grumman now. But the plume just keeps on growing, and the thermodynamics of the whole thing is, after 40 years, it spread so far. We have such a catastrophe that we just watched happen through my generation. Politicians, they just never got it to it. And now, is it fixable? Personally, reverse osmosis, water filtration, your own home. I mean, we go to the politicians, they don't get anything. They do some things, they get some things done, but let's face it, we got to help ourselves. Reverse osmosis filtration, the bottled water, which is double distilled, is clean. Mechanical filtration for all water coming into your house. That's what I do, and I pray that I can get up there so that I can make a difference in the environment, because the biologists, I don't think they got any biologists up there. And I'm particularly aware of the biochemical stuff, because my research has been in chemistry and biochemistry and molecular biology and all sorts of interesting, fun things, not politically related, but now I can apply what I know to that, and they're not going to pull any wool over my eyes when they say the water's clean out here. I do not think so.
Oh, no, it's not clear.
No.
Oh,
the state doesn't do a very good job of monitoring our water. Wait till they get a load of me if I can win.
We got time for one more question. Do you have a question, Shirley?
Yeah, what you said, you're going to donate 100% of your income to charity, so that where would your income come from?
Oh, they give you a salary. I think it's $79,500 for a part-time job. First, it shouldn't be a part-time job because all these people have these side jobs, and that's one of the ways they get over on our citizens. Second, the $79,500. That's the salary I'll take. I don't believe in second incomes. This is a full-time job. This is not a part-time job. The Assembly and the Senate both make that little bit, and that can go to charity. It will make a difference in my life, and I know I'll be doing good with the monies to put it into good use. And I do very many medical missions, and I've done a lot of pro bonos kind of work where I donated to the visually impaired in Harlem for dozens of years. It's part of my mantra is a little humanitarian, philanthropic activity makes you a better person. Any other questions? Off to the next class, huh? I'm the teacher too.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for coming. I just wanted to make some notable mentions. Ryan Cronin running for state senate in, doesn't say the district down here. 7, District 6. And then we got John Brooks running for a state senate in District 2. He's running against John Vendito's son, Mike Vendito. You know, John Vendito was just indicted recently. And also Frank Francois, who's running on the Green Party ticket for Congressional District 5. Thank you all for coming. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and Instagram. Have a great day. And don't forget to vote Tuesday. And if you're curious who's running in your district, go to ballotready.org.